The room goes quiet in a specific way when two people like that are in it together. Not the quiet of an empty space, the quiet of something held back, the quiet of everyone else in the room deciding, without discussion, to take up less space. It was the spring of 1967, Los Angeles, a private gathering at a house in the hills above Sunset. The kind of party that does not get photographed, does not get written about, and gets remembered in fragments by the people who were there for the rest of their lives. The host was a fight promoter with connections on both coasts. The guests were a mixture of athletes, actors, trainers, and the kind of people who orbit celebrity without quite being famous themselves. The food was good, the drinks were better, the conversation was loud, and then Muhammad Ali walked in, and the conversation stopped being loud. He was 25 years old, 6'3". 214 pounds of a man who had not yet lost a professional fight, and who seemed, when he entered a room, to create a slight atmospheric shift, as if the air pressure adjusted to account for him. He had been stripped of his heavyweight title 6 weeks earlier for refusing induction into the United States Army, and he was walking through that particular fire with his chin up and his mouth running, the way he always did. He shook hands, he laughed, he accepted a drink and set it down without touching it. Bruce Lee was already there when Ali arrived. He had been standing near the back windows, talking to a trainer he knew from the circuit, and he watched Ali come in the way a mechanic watches an engine being started. Not with awe exactly, but with a very focused professional attention. He was 30 years old, 5'7", 135 pounds in good clothes and better shoes. He looked, to people who did not know him, like someone who might be somebody's assistant. The party reorganized itself around Ali the way parties do. Within 20 minutes, he was holding court near the fireplace, surrounded by 7 or 8 people, telling a story about a sparring session that had apparently gone wrong in a specific and hilarious way. He was performing, not insincerely, Ali was never insincere, but performing the way only certain people can, where the performance is so total that it becomes its own kind of truth. Bruce had drifted closer, not obviously. Not in a way anyone would notice, but he was maybe 10 feet away now, leaning against a bookcase, still in conversation with the trainer, still appearing to be elsewhere, still watching. Here is where I should be honest with you. The accounts of what happened that night, and there are several from people who were there and people who claim to have been, diverge pretty significantly when it comes to the details. What almost everyone agrees on is that a conversation happened. What they disagree on is how it started, who moved first, and what exactly was said. I have tried to find a version that the evidence supports. What follows is as close as I can get. Ali was talking about fear. He had gotten there from the sparring story, something about how his opponent had shown up scared and had fought scared and had lost because of it. You fight what's in your head first, he was saying. The body just executes. I've never feared anyone I stepped in the ring with. Never. Not once. Someone in the circle, a fighter, older, with a flattened nose that told its own story, said, "Come on, not even Liston the first time?" Ali did not hesitate, especially not Liston. People thought I should be scared of Sonny Liston. I wasn't scared of Sonny Liston. I was excited about Sonny Liston. There's a difference. And then, from somewhere to his left, a voice said, "Fear and excitement use the same nervous system." The circle turned. Bruce Lee was 3 feet away. He was not being aggressive. His posture was easy, his expression neutral, almost politely curious, the way someone looks when they've said something they genuinely mean and want to see what comes back. But the words themselves had landed. Everyone in the circle felt it. This small, quiet man had just walked into the center of Muhammad Ali's gravity and placed a thought there that did not fit the existing conversation. Ali looked at him, and then, according to the trainer who told this story to a journalist in the mid-1980s, Ali smiled. "You saying I was scared of Liston?" "I'm saying," Bruce said, "that the feeling you had before you fought him, whatever you call it, your body couldn't tell the difference. There's something worth stopping on here. Bruce Lee in 1967 was not yet famous. He had been in one television series, had competed and taught martial arts for years, and was known in certain circles for being extraordinarily capable in a fight. But he was not a household name. He was not someone who had credentials that announced themselves. Walking into a conversation about fear and courage with the heavyweight champion of the world, strip title or not, Ali was Ali, required either a very confident man or a reckless one. Every account I've found suggests Bruce was neither reckless nor performing. He said what he thought because it was true. He always did. Ali studied him for a moment. "What's your name?" "Bruce Lee." "What do you do, Bruce Lee?" I teach people to fight. That right. Ali looked at him with something that was not dismissal, but was also not quite respect yet. It was the evaluating look, the look that went, "You might be something. Let me figure out what. You think you could fight me?" The circle went still in a different way now. Bruce said, "I don't think about it that way." "What way do you think about it?" "I think about what I would need to do, not whether I could." Whatever Ali had been expecting, it was not that. You could see it, according to three separate people who remembered this moment, in the slight pause before he responded. The recalibration. This man was not frightened, which was unusual. He was not trying to impress, which was rarer still. He was simply answering the question that had been asked. This is where most of the accounts agree on the emotional temperature of the room, if not on every word. What happened next was not a confrontation. It was something closer to the opposite. Two extremely skilled people recognizing each other across a significant physical and cultural gap and deciding, without negotiating it, to talk honestly. They sat down. The circle did not disperse so much as rotate outward, giving them space, staying close enough to hear. The party continued around them in a lower key. What were the actual stakes of this conversation? I want to be careful here because it would be easy to over-dramatize what was, on the surface, two men talking at a party. But the context matters. Ali was in the middle of the most consequential crisis of his career. Stripped of his title, facing a potential prison sentence, fighting a government that wanted to make an example of him. He was doing it without backing down, and Bruce Lee was in the middle of his own, quieter but no less real struggle. A Chinese-American martial artist trying to break into a Hollywood system that had very clear ideas about what Asian men were allowed to be on screen. Both of them knew what it was to be told their particular excellence did not count in the room where counting happened. Both of them were refusing to accept that. None of this was said, but it was present. "You believe you can't be beaten," Bruce said. It was not a question. "I know I can't be beaten," Ali said. "By anyone?" "By anyone." Bruce was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's not a fighting philosophy. That's a protection." Ali leaned forward. "Say more." "If you believe you can't be beaten, you don't have to keep improving. You already know the outcome. You can fight comfortable." He paused. Comfortable doesn't beat Joe Frazier. The name hung in the air. Frazier was the man being discussed as Ali's likely future opponent whenever Ali was allowed to fight again. He was left-handed, relentless, nearly impossible to hurt, and he threw hooks that had ended serious conversations before. He was not a fighter you wanted to think about comfortably. Ali looked at Bruce Lee for a long time. "So, what do you believe?" he asked. "I believe I can be beaten by the right person, the right day, the right conditions. I keep that in mind every time I train." That doesn't sound like much of a motivator. It's the most accurate motivator there is. I found two different people who remembered this exchange. They disagree on the exact wording. One of them remembers Bruce saying "most accurate," and the other remembers him saying "only honest." Whether those mean different things is maybe worth thinking about. Either way, the essential content of what he said has been consistent across every account I turned up. Bruce Lee's training philosophy did not rest on the belief that he was invincible. It rested on the belief that he was improvable. The distinction to him was everything. Ali sat back. "You know what your problem is, Bruce Lee? Tell me. You're not selling anything. You walk into a room and you don't take up any space. Nobody knows what you are." He gestured at Bruce's frame, not cruelly, but with a directness that Ali brought to everything. "You look like you weigh nothing. If you told me you were a dancer, I'd believe you before I'd believe you were a fighter." Bruce did not react to this the way you might expect. He did not tighten. He did not get quiet in the way that precedes anger. He looked, according to the trainer, who would later describe this moment, like a man who had heard an interesting observation about something he had thought about carefully. "I know," he said. "That's been my whole life." The party had quieted considerably. People who had drifted away were drifting back. Not obviously. The way people do when they sense something worth hearing. "How do you handle it?" Ali asked. "Same way you handle people telling you that you shouldn't have your title back. I show them what I can do, and I let the confusion be their problem, not mine." There it is. That sentence. Every account includes some version of it, with different words, and all of them agree on what happened when Bruce said it. Ali laughed. Not a polite laugh, not the performance laugh. The real one, which was different, shorter, more surprised. He laughed and he pointed at Bruce Lee, and he said to no one in particular, "He knows things." What Bruce Lee knew was something that is genuinely difficult to arrive at. because it runs against almost every social instinct we have. When you are consistently underestimated, when your size, your race, your accent, your age, your gender, any of the external categories people sort the world by, all of these become the frame through which people decide in advance what you are capable of. The instinctive response is to try to correct the perception, to explain yourself, to demonstrate, to get frustrated when the demonstration doesn't land. Bruce had moved past that. He had arrived at a place where other people's confusion was simply data, information about them, not about him. It was not bitterness. It was not indifference. It was a kind of freedom that took years to earn. And Ali, who had been navigating his own version of this his entire career, who had been told by experts that his fighting style was wrong, that he held his hands too low, that he was too pretty and too fast and too loud to be a serious champion, Ali recognized it immediately. They talked for 3 hours. This is the part of the night that the accounts diverge most dramatically, because 3 hours is a long time, and memory is selective, and everyone who was there was paying attention to different things. What comes through clearly is the shape of it. Two men with radically different physical gifts, radically different public profiles, and a surprisingly similar relationship with limitation, with being told what they could and couldn't be, talking in a way that was not performed for anyone in the room. The trainer who told this story most clearly remembered one specific exchange near the end of the night. Ali had been describing what it felt like in the late rounds of a fight, when the strategy had broken down and everything was instinct. He was describing the feeling of not thinking, just responding, moment to moment, reading and reacting faster than thought can follow. Bruce had gone very still when Ali described this. "That's it," he said. "That's exactly it. You know that feeling? It's what I train for. Most people train to be good. I train to disappear into the fight, until there's no Bruce Lee thinking about the fight. Just the fight happening." Ali chewed on this. Then, "What do you call that?" "I call it being empty," Bruce said. "Most people think emptiness means nothing. I think it means you finally have room for something real. I am not going to pretend I can verify what that sentence meant to Muhammad Ali on that specific night, in the context of everything he was carrying. I can tell you that two people who were in that room, speaking independently, remembered that Ali did not respond immediately, that he sat with it for a moment, that when he finally spoke, he said something like, "I think about that all the time and I never had words for it," which is maybe all you can ask of a conversation, that it gives words to something you have been living without them. They stood up eventually. The party was thinning. People were finding their coats. Ali was large and present, and when he stood, the room reorganized itself around him again, automatically. He looked down at Bruce, not with the evaluating look, something else now, something that had moved past evaluation, and he put out his hand. Bruce shook it. "You should be famous," Ali said. Bruce said, "I'm working on it." He was. Within 6 years, he would be the most famous martial artist in the world, the man who changed what cinema thought the human body was capable of, the man whose ideas about training and fighting and the philosophy of both would outlast his films by 50 years. Ali would have his title restored, would fight Frazier in one of the most consequential boxing matches ever held, would become something larger than a fighter. Both of them, on that specific night, were in the middle of their story. Not at the beginning, not at the end, but in the difficult middle section where the outcome is genuinely uncertain and the only thing you can do is keep moving. That's the part nobody talks about, by the way. The middle. Everyone wants to tell you about where they started and where they ended up. The middle is where you find out what someone is actually made of. Bruce Lee left the party before midnight. He had a training session scheduled for early the next morning, and he did not miss training sessions for parties, not even good ones. The trainer who had been watching the whole thing walked out with him. In the parking lot, under a clear April sky, the trainer said, "That was something else." Bruce thought about this. "He's not afraid of anything," he said. "That's not the same as being fearless. Fear and excitement use the same nervous system. He knows that. He just calls it something else." He got in his car. He drove home through the hills above sunset, the city spread out below him in its usual impossible sprawl, and in the morning, he trained. What he trained was not a style or a system. It was the ability to disappear, to become, for the duration of a fight or a moment, nothing but response. No ego protecting itself. No story about what he was. Just the thing itself, happening. He believed this was what the body was capable of when you stopped arguing with it. He believed it because he had felt it. He trained to feel it again, more reliably, in more conditions, against more opponents, with more of himself out of the way. Muhammad Ali, 3,000 miles east in a different kind of fight, was living in a version of the same idea. He was in a battle that was not about boxing anymore, and the way he was fighting it was not with anger or argument, but with a kind of absolute clarity about what he was and what he owed the people who were watching. He was not afraid. Or, if we take seriously what Bruce said, he was taking the thing that felt like fear and calling it something else, and letting that be what carried him. They never met again, as far as anyone can confirm. Two paths that crossed once, briefly, over 3 hours in a house in the hills, and then continued separately toward whatever came next. But here is what I keep coming back to. Of all the things those two men said to each other that night, across 3 hours of honest conversation between two people who had no reason to perform for each other, the thing that seems to have mattered most was the smallest thing, not the philosophy, not the training theory, not the mutual recognition of what they shared. It was Ali saying, "You should be famous," and Bruce saying, "I'm working on it," not "I will be," not "I know," not the performer's reflex towards certainty, just "I'm working on it." As in, the outcome is not guaranteed. As in, I am doing the thing I can do, which is the work, and the rest is not mine to control. As in, this is enough. This has to be enough. That is not a small thing to say. That is one of the harder things a person can mean. And Bruce Lee, 5'7", 135 pounds, standing in a parking lot above a city that had not figured out what to do with him yet, meant it completely. He always did.